Now arriving at Thomastown.
This episode of This Thomo Life is proudly brought to you by Yarra Plenty Regional Libraries, Thomastown branch. On today's program, Doctor Hettiarachi, a local GP in Thomastown for 39 years. I'm Dean Mirando, your host, and welcome to This Thomo Life, where you can share your Thomastown stories. I first met Dr. Hettiarachi maybe 8 years ago. For me, he is a patient doctor. He listens, he takes his time, and he will always have a chat with you. Now this may seem unusual, but when you go into his office and sit down with him, you feel as if you're being looked after.
My name is Ranjith Hettiarachi, a medical doctor holding qualifications, undergraduate qualifications from Sri Lanka initially, and then subsequent training both in Melbourne and Britain. And I ultimately succeeded in holding the fellowship of the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh in Scotland in obstetrics, gynecology, operative surgery. So of course I have come here to practice in a clinic practice after having initially practiced at Panch Hospital from 1976. Yes, my first experience of Thomastown was July of 1976 when I came to work here with one of the practices in High Street that time. They're no longer there, and I worked with them till the November of that year. Thomastown was not as populated as it is today. Medical practices wise, there were 5 of us on High Street, Thomastown, and there were 3 other doctors in Station Street, Lelo, and 1 other doctor in the Boulevard.
He's busy. We recorded at his clinic, an old suburban house turned into the Edgars Road Clinic.
Subsequently, I think it was about 1979, 80, somewhere there, that other doctors came to a clinic in Edgars Road, Thomastown. There were about 2 doctors to begin with, and maybe later more. And then I think others added on as we went by. So my recollection clearly was that we, starting from doctors under about 10, gradually increased to whatever it was perhaps in the 80s, 90s. So population at that time, of course, also had expanded. It was a mixed population here in Thomastown at that time. Then in the 80s, 90s, the population was mainly Macedonian population. Some of the others had shifted to other regions like Bandura, Eltham, Greensboro, and so on. Then a noteworthy event was the setting up of a consulting room clinic on High Street by the existing doctors, which meant that brought in specialists to that clinic in High Street, and we referred many patients to them. And of course, by this time, we had a radiology clinic in Station Street and some pathology services as well. All of these people were at time brought into the specialist consulting rooms in High Street and changed from time to time. So I think these were the original early events and my observations of them or recollections of them from that time. In terms of general practice, I see no problems as such. We are quite a number compared to what we were before, which is not a problem, just that we are maybe more competitive. But facilities are a lot more, particularly since the Panch Hospital in Preston was shifted to the Epping suburb as the Northern Hospital, and then there were many developments of consulting rooms, practices in and around the hospital. So these were some of the changes that took place, which was for the betterment of the population here.
As you can hear on the background, we're on a very busy road.
So in terms of general population, I see no problems as such. We are certainly a larger population, more congested, more vehicles. The roads have been expanded, particularly Edgar's Road, which was perhaps only a 2-lane road, expanded to a lot more. Then, of course, the development of the shopping complex in the corner of Main Street, Edgar's Road, which gradually developed into a fairly now large, substantial place. Other than that, I can't think of any main events. It has been quite a peaceful, good suburb to my understanding. Now, something that I did not mention were the schools. The senior and the primary, middle and the senior school in Main Street remained same and developed more. A leisure centre developed with other facilities of swimming and hydrotherapy, library and many other amenities.
We talked about the possibility of any other medical needs in the area.
It's difficult to say. We have certainly all the facilities in the area, just that the load is such that the facilities cannot quite meet the demands. This is our problem. Now, somebody could ask you, what about the hospital facility? Now, in the right mind, where is the other hospital facility? We have no other facility. The existing facility is having a lot of difficulty expanding. I don't think they'll expand in a hurry. They will have to deal with the population, which means what takes 3 months takes 6 months, 1 year. What takes 6 months will take 1 year, 2 years. So this is the situation we have come to. Day-to-day demands are emergency demands, outpatient demands, and inpatient demands. It is my impression that the Northern Hospital, as it is today, cannot handle all these demands. I think probably they were not planned by the planners of 1980s, 90s to meet this demand, or that we would have a demand like this in the year 2000, 2010 and so on.
Thomastown has grown incredibly. New suburbs north of Epping have come up like wildflowers. Demand increases. I have often brought this subject up with Dr. Hettiarachi. I wanted to talk about mental health services in the area and the accessibility of such.
Mental health, we are, I think in my mind, very poorly serviced. We have no public mental health facility other than that the psychiatric unit at the Northern Hospital. I don't know how well they can cater to it. Now, today I had a patient to whom we needed the so-called Northwestern triage services, and they are overloaded. Supposing somebody was suicidal and very desperately wanting help, and we cannot provide that help. We can call the triage, and the triage can only come out and help if there was an extreme desperation about our request. So it is not satisfactory. Public consulting is, I think, is poor psychiatric consulting. We have hardly any public consultants other than the 1 or 2 or more at the Northern Hospital, which is utterly inadequate. Now, you raised the question of elderly population. The only public facilities we got are the train running parallel to High Street, Thomastown, Reservoir and so on, and the bus service. Now, there are people actually who are unable to be serviced by both or either. They cannot go to a bus, and their physical conditions are such, or the mental conditions are such, they cannot travel by bus. They cannot access the rail station, which is, I think, right in the middle of Thomastown, but considering the lengths and breadths of Thomastown, how they could get up to Thomastown station or Lalo station or whatever and access a train is a question mark, which is not quite right for a developed country like ours. Well, of course, while I say that, we are miles and bounds forward from what we were in 1976.